ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. Welcome back to Blue Boards. This time we're going to be checking out an absolute classic, and that is Carcassonne, created by a guy whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I just make an utter klaus of myself. So, this is a really simple game about drawing tiles and laying them, but it maintains a sense of just instinctual satisfaction about it, because you can see right here, even with only half the tiles out, what the drill is, how all of these cities are just nicely closed up, how you can make these absolutely massive cities with huge amounts of scoring potential, how you can make these long winding roads that can go from one side of the map to the other, how you can make these monasteries here that can have meeples on them that you can fill all the surrounding tiles around and get some massive points off the top. There's just this very simple sense of accomplishment when you manage to successfully draw the tile you need in order to finish building a big project. With that said, let's talk about how you actually play the game. You draw a tile on your turn, and you need to pay attention to the 4 borders around your tile, because if you make the borders not match, you cannot legally place the tile. So for example, with this one here, it's got 2 sides that have roads and 2 sides that have grass. So if I were to put it down here, you can see here that not only would this road end, but this city would come out onto this road, and that's not allowed. You need to have them fit somewhere else on the map. So just to make an example here, I could technically put it down here, and if I did, I could choose to put a meeple onto that feature. I now own that feature, and that feature will be mine when I score it. Now that I have a meeple on it, no one else can put anything onto it, and I'll get to how that is relevant shortly. So I can technically do that, and that's a new scoring opportunity. Or I could take this road, and I could put it on here. Simple enough. But considering that someone already owns this road, I can't put a meeple down on it, so that wouldn't work out very well for us. I can also use it to extend just another road, for example, that hasn't been taken over, and I can always just drop the meeple, put the meeple down on top of that as well. But arguably the most important thing you can do with a tile is close a feature, whether it be a road or a city. So if I were to put it down here, this would close this road, because this road now has a beginning and an end, which is coincidentally enough the same village tile. So it would go 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles long, because it's using all the tiles that have a road on them that are relevant to this road. I would be able to take any meeples back that I had previously placed down on this feature, and then on the scoreboard, I would be able to give myself 4 points, because that's how much every road tile is worth. 1 point. Simple enough. You do, of course, also have some other things to worry about. Like, for example, up here, this meeple is standing on a monastery, and monasteries require you to put a meeple down on top of them, but when you fill the 8 surrounding tiles with tiles of any kind, as long as the borders match, you get to take that meeple back and score yourself a massive 9 points. So there's this little bit of strategic planning as to where you put stuff down, where you start building roads, where you start building cities, where you think, okay, maybe I can start a city over here and one over here and merge them together and make them a much bigger whole. Maybe I can put down this monastery here and then build everything around it. But there's more to it than that, and I need to explain what cities are first, although this does apply to roads as well. So, just for the purpose of demonstration, let's just pretend that this tile here isn't actually in the game and it doesn't exist. So, if we close up a city in the same way that we would close a road, we would get to score 2 points for each city tile, plus anything that has a shield scores an extra 2 on top of that. Basically, the score is doubled. So, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Easy enough, right? But, let's just say someone decided to be a little bit tricky about it. They put down a city tile over here, and then on their next turn, they drew another city tile, and they were able to connect them up. You're allowed to do this in Carcassonne, so now technically this city belongs to both of them, and they would both score the points once it's closed. As a result, it adds another layer of sneaky strategying, whatever you want to bloody call it, where you think to yourself, okay, do I have a way to build onto someone else's big, massive city that they're building? Because they might have a 20-point city, but if you could just put down one space away and then connect them up, suddenly that city is yours again. But then they can counter by trying to build on another city out of the way, put a meeple on that, and then hook them up. It just creates another layer of really clever stuff to do. And it's really fun trying to figure it out in practice. The only downside being that the game has a fair bit of luck, because normally you're supposed to take all of these tiles, give them a good old shuffly, waffly, and then you just draw from the top of the stack. So it's entirely possible that city piece that you need to finish off this city, connect to this road, and then connect to this other road just isn't going to happen, because there's probably only one or two examples of that in the entire deck, and one of them is already out, and someone else is probably going to get the other one. Or you might just not get a piece that you need to finish something here, like for example, a monastery with a road coming out of it. There's one right here on the board already, good luck trying to find that. Little things like that mean that planning too far ahead isn't really the best idea, just because you don't know what's going to come out of the draw deck, and you're better off just playing it by ear most of the time. With that said though, games of this barely last half an hour. Might be a bit longer if you're playing with the maximum allowed by the base box, which is 5 players. You can see 3 of the colors here, but here's 2 more, so you can play up to a maximum of 5. But with that said, because it's so short, because a lot of the tiles do work with a lot of other things, and because you've always got the ability to just plop something out on the edge and just start something from there, it never becomes too frustrating. The randomness never feels like it's really crippling the game in a way that it would in some other games along the lines of this one. So as a result, it just ends up being fun. Building up these really lovely looking landscapes, although admittedly the art isn't particularly great. It's pretty old, but it still looks pretty good, and it does the job of creating this huge interconnected medieval landscape fabulously. I know some games have taken this concept and driven it to better heights, but I haven't played those yet, so I don't know about them. But this is still just inherently satisfying to play, even though it's a 20-year-old game. Compare that to something like Monopoly, which was never satisfying to play. So, it's just really good. And thankfully, that's not the end of what you get in the base box. So, you do get a couple of what they call mini expansions. The main things that they add are the abbots, which are meeples with a little bit of a fancy hat on. I know you can't bloody see that because focus, there we go. They have these little hats, and they can be put down on monasteries, or they can be put down on tiles with these flowers on them, which is nice, and it works the same way as a monastery. So you just fill up the tiles around and fill them up and take them off. Although you can also take him off at any time instead of placing down a meeple in order to get the points that are already there. So if he was down on here and I decided to pull him off as my action for the turn, fix the focus there, he would get 7 points because he's got 6, 7 there. Pretty simple, adds a bit more strategy, doesn't really add anything to the overall teaching of the rules. There is also a rule called farmers, which they recommend you don't add until after your first couple of games, where instead of putting down a meeple on a feature, you can choose to put them down sideways instead. And roads basically act as borders, and so do cities, but every village or city that this guy touches is worth 3 points. So it'd be like 3, 6, 9, comes around to this one for 12, comes around to that one for 15. But of course, they're also really easy to steal, because it's really easy to connect someone off the beaten path and then just link some more grass around to them, and now you both own the farm and now you both get the points, unless of course you manage to fit a second one in there. A little bit confusing, that rule. The book could do, well, the book, it's like 4 pages, but it could do to explain that one a little better. But arguably the best thing they include as a sort of mini expansion in the box is the river. And the river is a series of tiles that you put down at the beginning of the game. All the river needs to be connected, of course, just like the rest of the game itself. And it basically just creates a flow, a bit of area to start off of, a couple of potential high point value targets. Like, for example, there is a monastery. There is a monastery on this river, And considering that everyone's going to be building off this river, that's pretty valuable to have at the beginning of the game. But yeah, that's what you get in the base box, and it's really satisfying. It can last you a long time. The satisfaction of building up a village slowly, a village, a city, a monastery, and just this landscape bit by bit until all the tiles are out on the field and it's just this sprawling thing that you can remember where you started, but there's just this point that you get to before you finish that's like, damn, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be, and you get that feeling almost every single time you play this, which means it does a really good job at setting out what it does to do. It's also worth noting that the game, while it doesn't advertise this on the box, it does actually have a solo variant, which is pretty simple. Instead of choosing whether or not you want to put down a meeple on a feature, because it's optional in the regular game, you have to. You start with 3 sets of 4 meeples, you give them 3 stacks of tiles, and you take turns placing down the tiles, slowly expanding out, being forced to put your meeples down and trying to finish features. And notably, only the one that is coming in last would be able to score. So in the scoreboard state over here, only black would be able to score, but you can score a feature with 2 colors if one of them is coming last. The game ends when you can't place a meeple when you have to, or if all the tiles are out, at which point your final score is the color in last place. And you can add or remove meeples to make it harder or easier, and for this video I used all the meeples. I don't mind the solo version. It's a good way of converting the multiplayer puzzle into a solo game, but it doesn't support any of the expansions, even the Abbot and the River, and honestly I just prefer playing with other people because it's just more fun to watch everyone else get screwed by luck as well as you. But it's there, they gave it out for free, it might be packed in like the next set of production runs, it would be nice if it was, but you know, that's just a thing. It is available for free, and if you search for Carcassonne solo variant on Google, you'll just get it straight up. And of course, the game's got an absolute ton of expansions, because of course it does. It's been around for 20 years, why wouldn't it? So, pretty much endlessly expandable. Can't give you any real opinions on them, unfortunately. I've only really played with the tower, and I've only played with the towers once, so yeah. But yeah, Carcassonne. There's a reason it's a classic. Inherently satisfying to build it out, great amounts of strategy, let down a little bit by luck, but not enough to really make it matter. Just don't take it too seriously. It's fast enough that you don't really have to take it seriously. It's still a good time. It's nice and simple, easy to teach. That's pretty much all I got to say. It's just really good. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.